The starship Vanguard floated silently through the dark emptiness of space, its hull scarred and systems flickering as it hovered near a cluster of deadly planets known to many as the Deathworlds. These planets were not just harsh, they were feared even by the toughest alien species, places where survival was a constant battle against impossible odds. The crew aboard Vanguard was a mix of humans and alien allies, all of them worn and weary after a sudden and brutal attack that had left their ship badly damaged and their hopes thin. Captain Mara Hale stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the cracked viewport that showed nothing but stars and the distant, hostile worlds lurking nearby. Every console beeped with warnings. Life support was failing in places, communication systems were unreliable, and the engines were barely holding together. The silence around them was heavy and cold, pressing in like the darkness of space itself. As days passed with no help in sight, the crew's strength began to wane, and quiet fear settled into their hearts. They were trapped far from home, surrounded by dangers no one could predict. The Deathworlds below were unforgiving, filled with creatures and conditions that seemed designed to end life swiftly and without mercy. Mara knew the only chance to save her people was to send a distress call to Earth, a message that could reach the homeworld's vast network and bring rescue or perhaps something worse. The decision weighed heavily on her. Sending a call like this was not just a simple signal. It was a beacon, a cry for help that could alert allies, but also enemies. The captain hesitated, feeling the weight of command more deeply than ever before. If the call succeeded, help might arrive before the Vanguard became a forgotten relic drifting in space. But if it failed, the signal could draw the wrong kind of attention, hostile forces that would seize on their weakness. Still, the situation left Mara no choice. She gathered her crew, speaking in calm but firm tones, explaining that the time had come to risk everything for a chance at survival. As the signal was prepared, a mixture of hope and dread rippled through the ship. Message itself was simple: a call for immediate aid, coordinates, and a brief explanation of their dire situation. Once sent, the silence afterward felt even more suffocating, as if the vast void itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Each member of the crew stared at their screens, eyes flickering with the glow of stars and the faint hope that Earth would answer. Outside, the Deathworlds loomed, silent witnesses to the fragile human ship clinging to life. Captain Hale understood that the moment they had chosen could change everything, either a new chapter of salvation or the beginning of a final dark end. The Vanguard's fate now hung on a single thread, a thread that stretched across light years, back to a distant blue planet called Earth, where the story of survival and sacrifice was only just beginning. Days passed after the distress call was sent, each one stretching longer than the last, as the crew of the Vanguard waited with growing anxiety for any sign of rescue. Then, without warning, a fleet of unfamiliar ships appeared on the horizon, cutting through the darkness like silent shadows. These were not the Earth vessels the crew had hoped for, but the Deathworlders themselves, the fierce and mysterious natives of the hostile planets surrounding them. The moment the ships docked, a tense stillness fell over the Vanguard. The air was thick with uncertainty as the Deathworlders, clad in rugged armor and moving with quiet purpose, began to board the damaged starship. Captain Mara Hale met their leader Kale, whose sharp eyes held both caution and a strange kind of respect. For centuries, humans and Deathworlders had existed on opposite sides of fear and misunderstanding, each viewing the other as a threat or myth. Yet here they were now, forced into contact by fate. Kale spoke in a voice steady but edged with gravity, explaining that in Deathworlder culture, responding to a distress call was more than a duty, it was a sacred oath, a bond that could not be broken. However, this ancient code came with its own price. By aiding the Vanguard, they were not just offering help, they were creating a connection that would ripple far beyond the immediate crisis. Kale warned that Earth must be told of this alliance, for the consequences of hiding such a pact could bring dangers neither humans nor Deathworlders were prepared to face. The crew listened, torn between relief at the arrival of powerful allies and unease over the cryptic warnings. As Kale and Mara negotiated the fragile truce, it became clear that trust would be hard to build and easy to break. The Deathworlders were survivors hardened by brutal worlds, their ways strange and sometimes harsh to human sensibilities. Yet beneath their stern exterior was an unexpected sense of honor and a fierce commitment to their word. The crew began to realize that their fate was now tied to these enigmatic beings in ways they could not yet understand. Each passing moment revealed new challenges, new threats lurking both outside and within the fragile peace. The Vanguard was no longer simply a damaged ship adrift. It had become the center of an ancient code and a future that could reshape the stars. Captain Hale's resolve grew as she faced the reality that survival meant more than just fixing their ship, meant navigating a web of alliances, old grudges, and mysterious forces far beyond their original mission. As the Deathworlders settled in, sharing stories of their brutal worlds and fierce battles for survival, the human crew found themselves caught in a silent storm, waiting to see if this uneasy truce would hold or shatter like fragile glass under pressure. The galaxy watched silently, knowing that the smallest choices made here could echo across light years, shaping the destiny of many worlds. And deep within the corridors of the Vanguard, a new chapter was beginning, one where the line between friend and foe was blurred, and where the price of help was only just becoming clear. Back on Earth, the sudden arrival of the distress signal sent shockwaves through the highest levels of government and society alike. The message from the Vanguard was more than a call for help. It was a spark that ignited fierce debates and political chaos. Leaders gathered in urgent meetings, their voices rising in concern and uncertainty as they wrestled with the choice. Before them, the Deathworlders, the mysterious and formidable natives of the harsh planets near the Vanguard, were a species known across the galaxy for their brutal survival tactics and strange, almost mythical powers. For decades, Earth's history books had painted them as unpredictable and dangerous, creatures more suited to battlefields than to diplomacy. Now, however, those same beings had answered the distress call, standing ready to help, but at a cost that unsettled even the most seasoned officials. The question was no longer just about saving the stranded crew. It was about whether humanity should risk forging an alliance with a species so different, so feared. Some leaders argued fiercely against trusting the Deathworlders, warning that accepting their aid could pull Earth into conflicts far beyond its control. Others saw an opportunity, a chance to learn from a tough and resilient culture that might offer humanity strength and survival skills in a galaxy growing ever more dangerous. Amid this turmoil, Lian Chen, skilled and calm Earth diplomat, known for her ability to navigate difficult negotiations, was chosen for a mission that could change everything. She was tasked with traveling to the Deathworlds to meet their leaders, face to face, and negotiate terms that could prevent disaster and open new paths of cooperation. Lian knew the weight of her responsibility. Failure could mean war or worse, but success could mean a future of alliance and peace. As she prepared to leave, she studied every detail of Deathworlder history and culture, determined to understand their motivations and fears. What she discovered was startling. The Deathworlders' request went beyond immediate assistance. They sought a formal pact, a binding agreement that would link their survival and future to humanity's in ways no one had imagined. This pact promised mutual protection and cooperation, but also demanded commitments that might change humanity's role in the galaxy forever. The stakes were higher than anyone on Earth had realized. With the entire planet watching and waiting, Lian's journey became a race against time and distrust. Every decision made in the halls of power echoed with the potential for new alliances or devastating conflict. As Earth's leaders debated, the Vanguard's fate and the hopes of its crew hung in the balance, tied to a future that was still uncertain and full of risk. The unfolding story was no longer just about survival. It was about the future of humanity itself, standing at the crossroads between fear and hope, war and peace, isolation and connection with an alien world that might hold the key to the next chapter in mankind's history. And as Lian Chen prepared to step into the unknown, She carried with her not just the hopes of her people, but the fragile trust of two very different species, beginning to bridge the vast gulf between them on the harsh and unforgiving Deathworlds. Captain Mara Hale and Kale, the formidable leader of the Deathworlders, set out together on a dangerous mission to find and rescue the scattered survivors still trapped across the savage terrain. These planets were alive with threats from violent storms that tore through the air like angry beasts too strange, deadly creatures that lurked in the shadows, waiting for any sign of weakness. As they journeyed deeper into this hostile land, the humans saw firsthand the true nature of Deathworlder, culture fierce and unforgiving on the surface. Yet beneath their tough exteriors lay a deep code of honor and unexpected moments of kindness that surprised even the most skeptical members of Mara's crew. The Deathworlders operated on a strict set of values where loyalty and trust meant everything. Every action was weighed by its impact on the delicate balance of their society. It was during this mission that Kale revealed to Mara the true meaning behind their response to the distress call. It was not merely a gesture of help, but a sacred bond sealed in blood and trust. To accept aid from the Deathworlders was to accept a connection that could never be broken without grave consequences. The price of forgiveness was high, and the humans began to understand that this alliance was more than just survival. It was a pact that demanded respect and commitment from both sides. As they moved through the wild landscapes, warning signs grew that they were not alone. An enemy faction, long hostile to both humans and Deathworlders, had learned of their cooperation and saw it as a threat to their own power. Suddenly, the fragile hope that had begun to grow was shattered by the attack. The humans and Deathworlders found themselves fighting side by side, not just to stay alive, but to defend the fragile new alliance that might hold the key to both their futures. The battle was fierce and brutal, pushing every member of the team to their limits. Yet, in the chaos of combat, bonds were forged stronger than any steel, and trust grew in the shared struggle. Mara realized that this fight was more than just physical. It was a test of whether two very different peoples could truly come together and overcome their past fears and prejudices. The cost of sending a distress call had become clear. Survival depended not only on weapons and strategy, but on the willingness to forgive, to stand united against common enemies, and to build a future on trust rather than suspicion. As the dust settled and the last echoes of battle faded, the survivors looked toward the horizon with cautious hope, knowing that this victory was only the beginning of a journey that would demand courage, sacrifice, and the strength to uphold. A bond forged in the harshest of worlds, with the enemy finally driven back and the scattered survivors safely brought together. A new chapter began not only for the Vanguard's crew, but for all of humanity. Earth and the Deathworlders moved quickly to formalize their alliance, pact born from hardship and strengthened by respect and shared survival against unimaginable odds. This was more than just an agreement between two groups. It was a bond that promised cooperation and protection, a promise to face the galaxy's dangers together rather than apart. Captain Mara Hale, standing once again on the bridge of the Vanguard, looked out at the stars with a quiet sense of reflection. The desperate call for help she had sent from the edge of the Deathworlds had blossomed into something no one could have predicted: an unprecedented connection between humans and a species once considered savage and distant. The alliance was fragile but powerful, forged through battles and sacrifices that had tested every limit of endurance and trust. Mara thought about the journey they had traveled, the moments of fear, the fights for survival, and the gradual understanding that had replaced suspicion with solidarity. Far from Earth, the human crew had learned to respect the Deathworlders' fierce loyalty and strange customs, while the Deathworlders had come to see the humans not as weak outsiders, but as allies, worthy of their sacred trust. As the new alliance took shape, Earth's fleets began to prepare to join forces with the Deathworlder ships, marking the first step toward exploring the galaxy side by side. This union promised access to new technologies, shared knowledge, and a stronger presence in a universe filled with unknown threats and opportunities. But more than that, it symbolized a larger shift for humanity, a step beyond isolation and fear into a future where Cooperation with alien species was not just possible, but essential. With every new challenge, humanity grew stronger and wiser. Having paid a steep price but also receiving the priceless gift of forgiveness and friendship, the sky above was no longer an endless void, but a vast frontier filled with promise and peril, a place where humans could finally claim their place among the stars. Captain Mara Hale felt a deep sense of hope, tempered by the knowledge that peace was never guaranteed and that vigilance would always be necessary. Yet she also knew that this new dawn had been earned through courage and unity, and that whatever lay ahead, humanity would face it together with allies at their side, and a spirit unbroken by the trials of the past. As Earth's ships and Deathworlder fleets prepared to embark on their joint voyage, the universe held its breath, watching the rise of a new force born not from conquest or fear, but from the shared desire to survive and thrive. This was the beginning of a new era, where humanity's story would no longer be written alone, but as part of a greater whole, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever challenges the stars might bring.